Life is battle. I've always been like that since a child. So I'm sorry, I'm not a normal person.
You're a warrior, probably.
I do not live thinking I want to have a nice life and a fun life. I'm sorry, I never thought like that in my life. But for me, I was involved as a young man. I was involved with the Human Rights Project. That was one of my first jobs. 3 years I worked with human rights, helping street children. So for me, this is life. For me, life is a battlefield, and I believe, especially as a Christian, we are called to fight for justice, for God, for our faith, and to protect people, to protect the weak, to fight against darkness, to fight against evil. That's how I see the world. You have to feel that you live in a great country. You want to feel great, and we know what American greatness means. It means military greatness. First and foremost, it means military greatness. It means bombing other countries into submission. And look what we're doing in Gaza. Are you proud of that? You MAGA people, or you Americans, are you proud? Slaughtering thousands of people, tens of thousands of people? You think this is making America great again? In 2001, with the Patriot Act, after September 11th, that was the beginning of this, trying to build this totalitarian system in America, trying to control the flow of information. And of course, it reached epic, horrible levels with Biden, where we saw really under Biden, we saw an absolute totalitarian regime. Really strange system.
How are you going to become a president to represent the whole country if, let's say, half of the states cannot vote for you?
Exactly. But this is why we joke. We joke that America is a two-party dictatorship, because the two parties, this is the one thing they agree upon, do not allow a third party to emerge on the federal level in all the states.
Zvezda Holding presents Dynamic Spectrum Talks now.
Hello, dear friends. You are watching Dynamic Spectrum Talks podcast, a place where we meet interesting and extraordinary people from all over the world. Together, we are looking for common ground between peoples and nations and trying to understand each other better and break down artificially created dividing lines. I'm Anna Shafran, and this is my colleague, Yuri Lindra.
Hello, everyone.
And today we are pleased to have as our guest, now not via video link, live in our studio, an American journalist and political scientist, John Varoli. John, hello.
Hello. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you.
You just arrived from the United States. Glad to see you, first of all.
Yeah,
and the first question, how was your flight and what news did you bring back from the new world?
Well, the flight, it was tense. It was a little bit tense because we all know what happened to Scott Ritter in the summer, in June, when he tried to come to St. Petersburg to the forum, and they took him off the plane. They apprehended him at the airport and took his passport away. So there's always that thought that this is possible because the American government does not want Americans knowing the truth about what's happening in Russia. They do not want to know, they do not want people going to Russia. They do not want Americans knowing the truth. So, but I landed. I made it to Estonia. And then from Estonia, I took the bus to St. Petersburg. And I'll just real quick tell you about Estonia, how to take the bus. And you take it to Narva, and then you have to walk across the border. You walk across about half a kilometer, and you get to the Russian side. And so on the bus was Russians. Most Russians who are going back to St. Petersburg, right? Because the bus goes from Tallinn to St. Petersburg. And I noticed how while we were still in Estonia, everyone is very quiet and quite dour, quite somber. And then as soon as we crossed into Russia, everyone becomes lighter, becomes more friendly. People start talking to each other. Strangers on the bus start talking to each other, and everyone becomes quite happy. And because why? Because the freedom. Because in Estonia, people are afraid. I was in Estonia for 4 days, and I saw how the ethnic Russians live in Estonia, and they live very fearfully. They're afraid of the Estonian government. There's a lot of discrimination and outright repression. So the Estonian government is threatening to close the Orthodox Church. They are closing Russian schools. They are closing Russian theaters and cultural organizations. So it's full-on repression against the ethnic Russians of Estonia by the Estonian government, a very highly nationalistic government. It has the support of the United States government, by support of Biden. Hopefully, Trump will change this, right? And I'm going to be writing to the White House. I'm going to be writing to Rubio because Rubio and Vance, they promised to protect religious freedom. They promised to protect civil rights and human rights in Europe. And we know that Europe has a horrible, horrible human rights record, right? Look how Europe persecutes Christians and has clamped down on free speech, no free press in Europe, almost no free press in Europe. And so I really hope that America can help the ethnic Russians of Estonia. That'd be great. So eventually I got to St. Petersburg. I was there for a few days, gave some lectures, and now here I am in Moscow. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, we're also very glad to welcome you in person. Last time we spoke, it was about 6 months ago, half a year ago. You told us that in the United States, something is not very well related to the people-to-people cooperation. You said that those who previously were connected with Russia have friends, relatives, some business ties with Russia. They are under surveillance. They feel some sort of suppression. Friends or colleagues may refuse to, continue communication as it was before because of this, let's say, Russian footprint. Now we see that the new administration came to power, and this new administration wants to speak to Russia, to negotiate. So my question is about, does it affect somehow the internal life in the United States? Do people feel more free to resume maybe previous connections with Russia or not? Or being somehow connected with Russian people is still a huge sin, and it's better to avoid.
Yeah, it's still a threat and a liability. It's still too early because Trump has been in power not even 2 months, and just so it's still too early. And people want to see what's going to be the result of the peace negotiations. If they could fall apart and we could go back to a full-fledged war. So people in America are waiting before they start reaching out to their Russian counterparts or Russian friends, before they start reestablishing those bridges. It's going to take some time. It's still too early to say. But at the very least, people like myself, I even felt it before I left. You felt relieved in the sense that, okay, we can probably say that now, we're not going to be raided by the FBI and have our apartments or houses ransacked. It's terrible what they've done, right? The FBI has raided people's houses and apartments, stolen everything. I just talked to someone recently who had been raided during Biden's time, and the FBI stole everything. They don't just come. They come in and they terrorize you, and they throw all these false accusations at you, and they threaten to put you in jail for 30 years. But they also steal everything, like everything you imagine you've accumulated for your life. This is what the American government does. They confiscate everything, and so you have to understand the level. To answer your question properly, the level of fear in America over the past 4 years during Biden. And let's call it a regime. I'm not going to call it administration. It's a regime. It was a horrible totalitarian. They really tried to establish a totalitarian regime. And as I didn't vote for Trump, but at the very least, Trump has stopped that process. But people lived in absolute fear when Biden was in the White House. I mean, people who were against Biden. Of course, people supported him. They felt better, of course.
If we are talking about the attitudes towards Russia and special military operation in American society in general, is there anything new, different from the period of dominance of U.S. Democratic Party? And can we say that Donald Trump has opened Americans' eyes to what is happening in Ukraine now?
So we've seen some progress on this front, and let's call it the informational front. So as you know, the United States during Biden's regime, it was living in an informational space of total lies and total disinformation, right? So this idea that Putin just woke up one day and he decided, let's invade Ukraine because we want to conquer Ukraine. We want to reestablish the Soviet Union, right? So this is the false narrative that was promoted by the White House. And of course, all Americans heard this, and most Americans, probably like 95% of Americans, liberal and conservatives, probably 95% believed it in, say, early 2022. Now, obviously, 3 years has gone by, and a lot of Americans, being inquisitive, searching for the truth, thanks to people like Tucker Carlson and just Joe Rogan and his podcast, more and more the true information is getting to the American people. So we see more and more people. I mean, I can't say 10, 15, 20%. It's hard to say, but we see now, how about this? A significant minority of Americans now understand the truth. They now understand that no, Vladimir Putin didn't wake up one day and just say, let's invade Ukraine, that this conflict began in 2014 when the United States organized a violent seizure of power, when the United States gave the order to start slaughtering civilians in Donbass. So Americans are starting to realize, okay, now it makes sense why Russia had to send troops in early 2022 to protect these people from being slaughtered by the regime in Kiev, which is supported by who? By the liberals, right? Because don't forget, Joe Biden was vice president in 2014, right? So Joe Biden, Ukraine has been a pet project of Joe Biden since 2014.
And his son, Hunter Biden,
and
as
his
well.
son, yeah. It was their personal project in many ways.
To continue the Ukrainian topic, the Ukrainian issue, there are a lot of talks currently we see and hear about possible negotiations and a ceasefire in this conflict. The two leaders, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, already have spoken twice by telephone in order to find a common ground for further ceasefire and peace settlement process. How do you think what we see now, is there some sort of prologue to a stable, long-lasting peace, or it's just a technical pause, technical stop before everything will resume and continue as it was? The battlefield actions.
Let's be very clear. Donald Trump, he really can stop this conflict in 24 hours. He promised to, and he can do it. But he has to be brave, he has to be courageous, and he has to do the right thing. What is that? He has to absolutely end all financing, all supplies of weapons, all supplies of military information. He needs to stop it now, right now. Stop it all. All support of the regime in Kiev must end. And the information is overwhelming. Kiev is a terrorist state. It has become a terrorist state, a totalitarian regime. According to the Russian Foreign Ministry, over 6,000 Russian civilians have died in Ukrainian terrorist attacks. They've been deliberately targeted and killed by Ukrainian military, with the help of the United States, with the help of Europe. 13,000 Russians have suffered injuries. So 20,000 casualties are victims of Ukrainian terrorism, which happens because of support from the West. Okay, Donald Trump says and when Donald Trump looks at the Middle East, he says, we're fighting terrorism in the Middle East. We're fighting Hamas. Okay, Donald, you're fighting terrorism. You know what? Let's fight terrorism in Ukraine, Donald. Donald, show us that you're a leader. Show us that you're a strong leader. Do the right thing. Fight terrorism in Ukraine, Donald. Why don't you do that, Donald? Why? So, I would like to hear the answer. I would like to see an American journalist ask this question to Donald Trump. But not our journalists, as you know, they're very weak, they're very incompetent, they're very misinformed, unfortunately, and a lot of them are just paid to carry out certain functions. So I'm sorry, but I'm not an optimist for these peace negotiations until Donald Trump comes out and tells the American people the full truth about what's happening in Ukraine, the nature of that regime in Kiev. Until he says the truth, there can't be positive results. How can there be positive results if there's no truth? We have to agree on the truth. If America is going to have its own truth and Russia has its own truth, and the truth is on Russia's side, let's be very clear, the facts and the truth support Russia's side. The facts, America lives in this false reality. So Trump has to say, he has to put an end to this false reality in America. He's got to admit the truth. And that's not being weak. That's being strong. Donald, that's being strong. Admit the truth. Oh, we can't admit that Russia's right. We can't admit that Putin's right. No, we can. We can be courageous. We can be strong. We can admit that Putin is right. Russia is right. We have to. And if we're not going to do it, then, okay, the conflict's going to continue.
So for now, you don't see prospects for long-lasting peace, more like a technical break?
Yeah, most likely, yeah. Unfortunate. But it's good that they're talking. So under Biden, as of even early January, Biden was still in the White House in early January. And we were on the edge of nuclear war. We were on the edge of World War III. So let's not forget that. We forget so quickly today. Everything moves so fast. We were really on the verge of the Third World War. So at least, thank goodness, and Biden wouldn't talk to Putin. And now Trump is at least talking to Putin. He's walked away from the edge of the abyss. He's take a few steps back. So that's good. That's progress.
Last time you told us that because of inclusiveness policy implemented by the previous administration of White House, led by Joe Biden, Americans who uphold traditional family values have become real outcasts. How has the situation changed after Trump's decree establishing only two genders, male and female, and how strong is the resistance of rainbow values lobbyists.
So let's talk about the landscape, the political and social landscape in America first, right? So we have 50 states, 20 states are, let's say roughly, I forget the exact number, but roughly 20 states are under the control of conservatives, totally under control. It means the governor, the assembly, and then 20 states are totally under the control of liberals, and 10 states are kind of mixed, right? There might be a liberal governor and the assembly might be conservative or vice versa, right? So I live in a liberal state. And I don't see any changes, no difference. Nothing has changed because the nature of the federal system, America's federal system, it gives a lot of power to the states in social policy, in education. Now, of course, there can be federal laws. There are federal laws which supersede state laws. And the White House can give orders. So we see this. The White House has given this order to ban transgender to ban, for example, men participating in women's sports. Okay, so this is the federal order, and in theory, it should cover the entire United States. But we have this federal system, so the states can sue. They can sue the federal government, and they can stop this process. They can put a hold. They can put a freeze on these orders, right? So I'm not a lawyer, so I can't really tell you. I can't tell you intricately in detail how it works. But roughly, that's the situation. So we see some states are fighting back. The liberal states are fighting back. New York, Maine. So for instance, right now it's highly publicized this conflict between the liberal governor of Maine and the White House. They have a conflict. So the liberal governor of Maine says, no, I'm gonna fight for transgender rights until the very end. I'm gonna fight to the bitter end. So there's a lawsuit on between the federal government and Maine. So in some ways, this is the American Civil War, just without weapons, without bullets, but in courts. So that's also not so bad, right? It's better to keep it peaceful, to keep it in the courts. But don't forget, the liberals are going nowhere. They're still, let's say they're roughly 45% of the population. So it's still obviously a sizable number of Americans. They have still a lot of power. They control Wall Street. They control Hollywood, right? They control the mass media. 90% of our major media are liberal, under the control of the liberals. So they still have a lot of power, and they're going to keep fighting. They're going to keep fighting.
So in fact, by this moment, practically nothing has changed.
Not much. I mean, again, so how about this? Things are not getting worse because 2 months.
This is a good news so far. Didn't get worse.
Yeah. So 2 months ago, when Biden was still in the White House, it was horrible. The situation was absolutely bleak. How about, let's say, before the victory, before Trump was victorious, the situation was absolutely bleak, and I thought Kamala was going to win. I thought she was going to win. And I was expecting like another horrible 4 years. And a lot of people thought, yeah, this is good. They were going to continue because now I was surprised, by the way. I'm surprised how the Democrats conceded defeat so easily. Like first of all, I thought that Kamala was going to win. And second of all, if Donald Trump wins, the Democrats, the liberals, are going to respond by having mass riots, like we saw with Black Lives Matter in the summer of 2020. But there's been no riots. There's been no violence. So this is really strange. I wonder, a lot of people, experts even, were asking, what's happening? This is really strange. Why did they concede defeat so easily? So we can talk about that some other time.
John, you said that the decree by the president, the new law, doesn't automatically mean that it will be implemented on the whole United States because of difficulties he already described because of the system. But beside legislation, Donald Trump brought, let's say, proper people of his team because he considered them proper, especially Robert Kennedy Jr., also a former candidate for the presidency, who will run the medical care system, become a boss of this social
health ministry.
Health ministry. And one of the issues he's going to tackle together with Donald Trump is clinics that easily do the surgeries to the children to amend their genders, to turn boys into girls and girls into, I don't know, something like that. It's horrible. From our perspective, it's absolutely disgusting and cannot be justified in any way. But there is a huge problem. So the problem is seen in the White House, in the current administration. There is new people who should deal with this problem. Do you think that it will work? Because the decree itself doesn't automatically mean that situation is going to change. With the proper people, there is a light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, this issue of transgenderism, it's one of the main issues that really defeated the liberals, the Democrats, because I think so many Americans were angry with this. So many Americans, they were furious that this is happening. It's disgusting, right? It's reprehensible. It's disgusting on every level. No sane, educated person could possibly support this. And how is it possible? But we know how it's possible because, liberal ideology has just become absolutely unhinged and extremist and almost, medieval in the sense of being just absolute. What's the word? I'm trying to find the word in English. But just absolute, devoid of any logic, devoid of any morality, devoid of any sense of decency and common sense. So, this is the crisis in liberalism. So in some ways, the liberals, they've destroyed themselves because of their extremism. They've brought themselves into a corner, into a dead end, and people see it. People just, like myself, like 10 years ago, I would have said this. I'm moderately liberal. 10 years ago, I probably would have said that. And today, it's like, no, I don't want to have anything to do with liberalism at all. And many Americans have told me that. Many Americans, especially 50, 60, 70 years old, people who were always hardcore Democrats, hardcore liberals. So we've seen that. That's another reason why Trump won. We just saw so many people who previously identified as liberals and Democrats, they've changed sides. And especially because of the issue of transgenderism, because it's just so, we say it's off the wall. It's just so crazy. It's like, there's nothing to talk about here. It's just obvious. The answer is obvious. It's wrong. It's evil. It's got to stop. So the liberals, the liberal extremists, they still continue. But the more they continue, they hurt themselves because people just get even more angry. People now, the majority of Americans, they just understand what's happening. And so the liberals can keep pushing it, but they're only going to be further defeating themselves.
I remember you said that you were going to vote for Kennedy in the presidential election. Who, if it's no secret, did you vote for when he withdrew his candidacy?
So I voted for the candidate from the Constitution Party. And what's interesting is that I went into the booth, you go into the booth to vote, and I wasn't even sure who would be on the ballot for president. That's right. Because it's different in each state. So the candidate from the Constitution Party, we have the two main parties, and then we have about another dozen. We actually have about another dozen third parties. We call them third parties. So we have another dozen small parties. But of those dozen parties, none of them are in all the states. This is strange. I didn't even know that. It's weird. So the candidate that I voted for, the Constitutional Party, he was on the ballot of maybe, say, 15 to 20 states, not all 50. It's really a strange system.
How are you going to become a president to represent the whole country if, let's say, half of the states cannot vote for you?
Exactly. But this is why we joke. We joke that America is a two-party dictatorship because the two parties, this is the one thing they agree upon, do not allow a third party to emerge on the federal level in all the states. Okay, they can happen. They can be present in 10 states, 20 states, but not in all 50 states. This is sort of the unwritten agreement between the two major parties. So they preserve that two-party dictatorship. So I voted for Terry Randall, right? Terry Randall, and he's against abortion, and he's for real American values, like foreign policy that's non-interventionist, non-militaristic. So he's against militarism. He's for real freedom as the Constitution, right? It's the Constitution Party. So he's for real freedom as we have written in the American Constitution. Unfortunately, as we know, as we've seen over the past 25 years, the U.S. Constitution no longer works, that there's no civil liberties. The basic freedoms in the Constitution were basically annulled with George Bush, when George Bush passed the Patriot Act. And so if this Terry Randall, if the Constitution Party, if they would have been in power, we could return to the old American Republic. But let's see, I think he got about a few 100,000 votes. I think I have to check, but let's say he got roughly a few 100,000 votes. Again, I'm saying roughly, maybe he was on the ballot in 20 states.
0.00 something.
I think there's 200 million registered Americans who have the right to vote. So 200 million Americans can vote. Again, I have to check the figure, but this candidate gets maybe a few 100,000. And I think if you want to look at the third parties, I think the party that came in third place maybe was the Libertarians. Oh no, it was Kennedy. Kennedy was still on the ballot in many states, and he still got a lot of votes. Even though he had removed his candidacy from the race, he was still on the ballot. This is another interesting thing, right? He removed himself from as a candidate, but he was still on the ballot in about 15, 20 states, and I think he came probably in third. He got a lot of votes. Oh, and Jill Stein from the Green Party, she got a lot of votes as well. Again, I have to check the data, but
And one interesting thing, you said traditional American values. Could you please name this traditional American values once again?
How differ them from Russian traditional values, for
Well,
example?
most important is freedom of speech and freedom of press. Right? These are freedom of the press, right, and freedom of religion. So these three are. I mean, of course, there are more, but these are by far the most important. There has to be a free flow of information. And I remember, as a child growing up in America, you could actually have conversations and disagree with people, and you could say what you want, but that's no longer possible. I mean, it started in 2001 with the Patriot Act, after September 11th. That was the beginning of this, trying to build this totalitarian system in America, trying to control the flow of information, and of course, it reached epic, horrible levels with Biden, where we saw really under Biden, we saw an absolute totalitarian regime, really full-fledged totalitarian regime, where the flow of information was closely controlled by the government. But that's...
John, slowly but surely we are reaching to the end of our show for today, but the most important and the most interesting question now I'm going to ask, because it's special question for the end of the program. I must ask you about MAGA concept, Make America Great Again. We know that slogan, MAGA, was the headline of the first election campaign by Donald Trump. This slogan was used again during his third election campaign, and he became a president for the second time. We know that MAGA, in terms how Donald Trump understands it, he already highlighted, this concept means enlarge the territory of the United States, to turn a United States to a heartland, to a new ground empire. What does it mean? To incorporate Canada as a 51st state of America, to take from Denmark the Greenland. Yeah. So I was thinking, in Russia it's Greenland, it's the same as Greenland. A land where a lot of green forests, Also to take control. Green ground, yeah.
Not
and
forest.
A lot of sheep eating this green ground. Like it was when the Vikings first came to this island 1,000 years ago, but since that time it's covered with ice. In any case, also to establish an effective control over the Panama Channel, and maybe also to bring lower the border with Mexico, also to expand probably to the northern Mexican territory. How do you think, and you and Americans, how do you perceive these ideas? And do they really have support in the American society?
Oh, they certainly have support. I mean, as we saw, he won despite all the... the liberals had enormous power and force going into that election in November. And they should have won. They had so much power, media, financial, big tech companies, but Trump won. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It really is a miracle. In some ways, I agree with him. He's right. It's sort of a miracle that they were able to win. But now I have a big problem with this notion of MAGA. And I want to speak to his supporters, like his real hardcore supporters. Because most Americans, they just, they voted for him because they hated Biden. So most people, just hate Biden. But then there's, 20% of Americans who are really hardcore MAGA supporters. And my question to them is are you okay? What's wrong with you? You have to feel that you live in a great country. You want to feel great. And we know what American greatness means. It means military greatness. First and foremost, it means military greatness. It means bombing other countries into submission. And look what we're doing in Gaza. Are you proud of that? You MAGA people, or you Americans, are you proud? Slaughtering thousands of people, tens of thousands of people? You think this is making America great again? Look at the war against Russia. Look at what we're doing. We're using Ukraine to attack Russia. So we're destroying the Ukrainian nation, it turns out, and to fight Russia. Trying to weaken the Russian nation. Are you MAGA people? Are you proud of that? That's not making America great again. You know what? I want mama. I want make America moral again. Moral. Why doesn't anyone say that?
Sounds nice.
I want mama. That's
mama.
That's my slogan. Mama. Let's make America moral again. Let's be against war. Let's be against militarism. Let's be against terrorism. Let's be against murder. Hey, fellow Americans, especially you MAGA people, what's up with you? Especially, you a lot of you people consider yourselves Christians. Christians? I mean, you people consider yourselves Christians and who support Trump. Have you not heard of the Ten Commandments? I think it's pretty clear what the Ten Commandments say. So why are we supporting? I'm sorry, but Trump has a highly. He wants to be remembered as a peacemaker, but look so far. He has a highly militaristic foreign policy. Look what's happening in the Middle East. He could end the wars in the Middle East. He could end the war against Russia. He could do it right now. He could force Israel to stop slaughtering people in Gaza. He could force Zelensky to stop this war against Russia, but he doesn't do it. So Trump can talk all he wants. He can talk about peace, peace, peace. But we say actions speak louder than words. So Donald Trump, show me you're a peacemaker. End these wars now. Be a real peacemaker. But I'm sorry, Donald Trump is a liar. He's deceiving people. And it's sad to see that a lot of good Americans, conservative Americans, Christian Americans, it's sad to see that they're going along with him. They should hold him accountable. Make America moral again.
And at the end of our conversation, let me ask you the following question. Is there something good in our life, and what?
Do you still stay positive, living in these crazy circumstances?
Well, I mean, for me, life is battle. I've always been like that since a child. So I'm sorry, I'm not a normal person.
You're a warrior, probably.
Like, I do not live thinking I want to have a nice life and a fun life. I'm sorry, I never thought like that in my life. But for me, I was involved as a young man. I was involved with the Human Rights Project. That was one of my first jobs. 3 years I worked with human rights, helping street children. So for me, this is life. For me, life is a battlefield, and I believe, especially as a Christian, we are called to fight for justice, for God, for our faith, and to protect people, to protect the weak, to fight against darkness, to fight against evil. That's how I see the world. But is there a lot? Yeah, there are a lot of great things in our world. I think we have the beautiful world. That's the thing. We have such a beautiful world. Just the natural beauty, and I see so many good people. Especially here in Russia. That's what I love. But I just see so many good people in Russia. And this is what infuriates me about American foreign policy. Like, why are we fighting against such a good country as Russia? Such good people. You want to get along with us. You want to live in peace with us. But no, our elite wants to fight you. They want to wage war against you. They threaten to break up your country. They openly say that. We want to strategically defeat Russia. We want to break up Russia. I mean, this is what the West is saying. And you are saying, wait, we just want to get along with you. We want to live in peace with you. And so your people, the Russian people, give me hope. I think there's so much beautiful in your country. And I hope Americans will learn from you. I hope they'll learn from you.
And we wish these American people success in what? To make America moral again.
Make America moral again.
And we want Russia to
and
be
let's
moral.
study each other. Yes, let's rediscover, because there are a lot of good people living not only in Russia but in all over the world. And our aim, our goal is to let know the people that we exist actually. And we can communicate and do and commit a lot of, not commit crime, but do a lot of good activities together in order to make this world moral again. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. John Varoli, American journalist and political scientist, was in our studio in Dynamic Spectrum podcast.
See you.
Thank you. See you.
Zvezda Holding presents Dynamic Spectrum Talks now.